Okay, let's turn our attention now to the latest on the war in the Middle East, now into its fifth week. U.S. President Donald Trump says that talks with Iran are progressing, but he's not ruling out putting U.S. boots on the ground. Meanwhile, the fighting continues with strikes in Iran, Lebanon, and Israel today. So let's zoom in for a look at the latest developments. So Iran continues to stop most ships from using the Strait of Hormuz, that critical choke point. Saudi Arabia has been sending its oil by pipeline west towards the Red Sea. But in that scenario, Iran's proxy in Yemen, the Houthis, have now entered into the war, firing on Israel. Trump now says American troops could seize Kharg Island, which is the key to the country's oil exports. But to get there, they'd have to sail up the Strait of Hormuz, which could be risky. And so right now, Donald Trump continues to keep the world guessing about what he plans to do next. So let's dig into that with CBC's Willie Lowery, who's tracking those developments for us from Washington. Willie, Trump has been busy delivering all kinds of messages in the last 12 hours. Bring us up to speed on what he's been saying.
Yeah, Natasha, he certainly has. U.S. President Donald Trump once again reiterating that the U.S. military operations against Iran were progressing ahead of schedule, but also that negotiations with Tehran were ratcheting up. Speaking with reporters late last night while aboard Air Force One, the president said that a deal was potentially within reach and that the U.S. had effectively already created regime change in Iran. Let's take a brief listen to some of what he had to say.
So I think we've had regime change. I mean, you can't do much better than that. The regime that was really bad, really evil was the first one. That was done. The second was appointed, and they're gone. They're all dead, other than one who may have a little life. And then they're really the third group. And the third group of people that seem to be much more reasonable. It truly is regime change.
Trump perhaps referencing Mujtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader whose status, quite frankly, is unknown. But the president also adding that Iran was essentially offering or extending another olive branch to the U.S. in the form of allowing additional oil tankers to transit through the Strait of Hormuz. This after they had allowed 10 or allegedly allowed 10 tankers through just last week. Let's take another listen to some more of what the president had to say.
They're agreeing with us on the plan. I mean, we asked for 15 things, and for the most part, we're going to be asking for a couple of other things. And just to prove that they're serious, they gave us all these boats. They gave us as a tribute, I don't know, I can't define it exactly, but they gave us, I think out of a sign of respect, 20 boats of oil, big boats of oil, going through the Hormuz Strait.
And just this morning, Trump taking to social media and issuing yet another threat against Tehran. He said, quote, "The United States of America is in serious discussions with a new and more reasonable regime to end our military operations in Iran. Great progress has been made, but if for any reason a deal is not shortly reached, which it probably will be, and if the Hormuz Strait is not immediately open for business, we will conclude our lovely stay in Iran by blowing up and completely obliterating all of their electric generating plants, oil wells, and Kharg Island, and possibly all desalination plants, which we have purposefully not yet touched." Natasha, it's important to note here that power plants are, of course, civilian infrastructure, as are desalination plants, which really they're essential to providing civilians with drinking water throughout the Middle East. Destroying both would almost certainly violate international law and be a war crime.
Absolutely. And the U.S. administration has said repeatedly, we don't target civilian infrastructure or civilian targets. So keeping that in mind and the mixed messaging we're getting from the U.S. administration, Willie, let's think about the Iranian side of all of this. Where do things stand there?
So in comments published by a major news agency inside Iran, a spokesperson for the Foreign Ministry says that there have actually been no direct negotiations with the U.S. We know as well that Iran has issued its own 5-point plan as a sort of rebuttal to a 15-point peace proposal that the U.S. sent them through intermediaries. Iran asking for, among other things, sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. That is very unlikely to happen. Iran, the spokesperson also saying, though, that Iran essentially had a lot of problems with the 15-point peace proposal. Let's take a listen to him.
As I have mentioned before, the material conveyed to us under any title, such as the 15-point plan, has mainly included very ambitious, unrealistic, and illogical requests.
And Natasha, Iran also says essentially that they're just waiting for a U.S. ground invasion, and they accuse the U.S. of talking publicly about negotiations while secretly preparing for a ground attack. We also know that Pakistan has been attempting to mediate. They say that they will hold talks between the two sides, but neither Iran nor the U.S. has confirmed that they'll be present at any talks in the coming days.
CBC's Willie Lowry in Washington. Thank you, Willie.
My pleasure.
So, despite the fact that President Trump is saying that the diplomatic progress is being made, the war itself is continuing. So let's get closer to the field. Megan Williams is joining us now from Dubai. And it was not a quiet night where you are, Megan. What's the situation like on the ground in that city, but across the Gulf?
No, Natasha, this morning at about 3:30, I was woken up by a huge boom. Having been here a few weeks ago and heard these in continuation, I think that was an interception of a missile or a drone. No word from the government on what it is, but they issued a couple of alarms after. These sorts of strikes are obviously continuing across the Gulf and between Iran and Israel. It confirmed today that the Revolutionary Guard Navy commander Ali Reza Tangsiri was killed by an Israeli attack. As I mentioned, those two countries are continuing to exchange missiles and drones. Israel is trying to attack Iran's infrastructure. And also this weekend, the Yemen's Houthis have entered into the conflict, and that has continued today with attacks on Israel. Their sort of card to play is the Red Sea, making it difficult for oil to get from the pipeline in Saudi Arabia that crosses from the east of the country to the west and goes out into the Red Sea. It's usually about 2 million barrels a day. They've upped that amount to 4. They're trying to get it up to 5 million in order to mitigate the blockage on the Strait of Hormuz. But of course, with the Houthis entering into the war equation, that could make getting oil out of the Red Sea more difficult. Across the Gulf, various countries continue to be targets. Kuwait has intercepted a number of drones today. It was hit over the weekend, an army base there, injured, and probably an Iranian attack. They haven't confirmed it, but 10 personnel were injured there. In a desalination plant in Kuwait, there was one Indian national that was killed there. What we're seeing, of course, is apart from Iran going after U.S. military bases, it's also targeting civilian infrastructure. So desalination is very important certainly for Kuwait. It provides about 90% of the water, that desalination plant, as well as 40% throughout the world. The Gulf countries have a certain expertise in desalination and export that. So again, these hits to the infrastructure. Bahrain also intercepted a number of drones today, and I haven't heard anything else here in Dubai since this morning, but everybody is sort of on high alert.
Megan, you made reference to the Israelis being hit both directly by the Iranians, but now with the Houthis entering into the war from the Red Sea. You've also got the ongoing issue between Israel and Lebanon and Hezbollah operating in Lebanon. What's happening on that front?
Well, Haifa, the latest attack there from Hezbollah towards Israel was against Haifa this morning. Debris from an intercepted missile hit a oil refinery there, and a gasoline storage tank caught fire, and there was black smoke that lifted off of that. The fire is now contained, and Israel says there were no casualties. It's not clear completely whether that missile came from Hezbollah. They think so, but it could have also possibly come from Iran. Israel, as we know, is expanding into southern Lebanon. There's been a bit of a diplomatic flashpoint in Lebanon. It declared the Iranian ambassador a persona non grata, essentially asking him to leave. Iran responded by saying he wouldn't leave. So again, this is just yet another sign of how much Iran is controlling Hezbollah and how much of a proxy it is in the region.
CBC's Megan Williams in Dubai. Thank you so much, Megan.